Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are diving deep into anxiety.
Ooh, anxiety.
Yeah, it was a very popular request.
I can imagine.
So many of you reached out and said, you want us to do a deep dive into anxiety, and you give us so much to work with.
Yeah.
Tons of articles on the causes and symptoms of anxiety, and of course, all the different ways to treat and manage it.
So much to unpack.
Yeah, but we're going to give it a shot.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. By the end of this deep dive, you'll have a way better understanding of what anxiety is, how it manifests, and most importantly, what you can do about it.
That's the most important part.
You know, it's interesting. One of the articles mentioned that there's a specific gene that's linked to anxiety.
Really?
Yeah, it regulates how serotonin is transported in the brain.
Interesting.
It seems like even our genes can play a role in our anxiety levels.
It is amazing how our genes can affect us in so many ways, right?
Yeah.
Anxiety is such a complex thing.
Absolutely.
It's normal to feel anxious sometimes.
Totally.
It's a natural human emotion. It's a survival mechanism.
Yeah, like fight or flight.
Exactly. But for some people, anxiety can become so overwhelming that it starts to interfere with their daily lives.
Right. It crosses that line from normal anxiety to an anxiety disorder.
Exactly. And that's what we're focusing on today, right? Not the everyday jitters, but when anxiety becomes a real problem.
Exactly.
And, there are so many different types of anxiety disorders.
Yeah, your articles mention a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, but today we're going to focus on the common threads, the causes, symptoms, and management strategies that apply to all types of anxiety.
That's good.
That way you'll have a good understanding of the basics.
Okay, so let's get to the root of it.
Okay.
What causes anxiety in the first place?
Well, according to all the articles you sent, there are 4 main factors.
Okay, lay them on me.
Genetics, biology, environment, and psychology.
Okay, 4 major players.
It's kind of like a recipe with each ingredient playing a part.
Interesting. So let's break it down.
Okay.
Let's start with genetics.
Right.
You mentioned earlier that there's a gene that's linked to anxiety, right?
Yeah, the one that regulates serotonin.
Right.
Well, that's just one example of how our genes can make us more prone to anxiety.
So it's not a guarantee.
No, not at all. But
Right.
think of it as inheriting a sensitivity to stress.
Okay, that makes sense.
And there are other genes involved too, so it's clear that anxiety isn't just a matter of willpower.
So our genes set the stage.
They lay the groundwork.
And then our biology kicks in.
Exactly. Think of your brain as a bustling city.
Okay, I like that.
And neurotransmitters are the messengers that zip around, keeping everything running smoothly.
Okay.
And when it comes to anxiety, 3 key players are serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those, but remind me what they do again?
Okay, well, serotonin is all about mood balance.
Okay.
It affects everything from sleep to digestion.
Oh, wow.
Dopamine is our motivation and reward chemical.
Ah, so that's the one that gives us that feel-good feeling.
Exactly, and norepinephrine is the one that kicks in during that fight or flight response, getting us ready for action. And when these messengers are out of whack, it throws the whole system off balance.
Makes sense.
And that's when anxiety symptoms can flare up.
Okay.
So it's really all about balance.
Right, a delicate dance of chemicals.
Exactly. And when the music stops and someone steps on their partner's toes,
Oh, that's a good analogy.
thanks.
Things get messy.
Exactly. But it's not just our inner world that affects our anxiety levels.
What about the outside world?
Yeah, our environment can definitely play a role.
The articles you sent were full of examples of stressful life events that can trigger anxiety.
Yeah, like what?
Oh, all sorts of things. Childhood trauma, relationship problems, financial stress work, or school pressure, health issues. It's a long list.
That is a lot.
Right, and it's like they all fall into these different categories.
It's interesting.
Yeah, like you could have one major stressor in your life, or you could have a bunch of smaller ones that all add up.
Like a perfect storm.
Exactly.
And then there are social and cultural pressures too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like trying to live up to unrealistic expectations or dealing with isolation or discrimination.
It's a lot to handle.
It really is.
Okay, so we've got genetics, biology, and environment all contributing to anxiety.
Yes.
What about that 4th factor you mentioned, psychology?
Ah, yes, that's a big one.
So how does our mindset add fuel to the fire?
Well, certain thought patterns and habits can make us more vulnerable to anxiety.
Oh, interesting.
Like if you're constantly engaging in negative self-talk, or if you have this need to be perfect, or if you're always trying to control everything, or if you're always expecting the worst, those things can definitely make anxiety worse.
And what about our past experiences?
Well, if we've been through tough times before, those experiences can shape how we react to stress later on.
It's like our brains are trying to protect us by being extra cautious.
Exactly. But sometimes they go into overdrive.
Yeah, and we end up feeling anxious all the time.
Exactly. And that brings us to the next piece of the puzzle.
Which is?
Recognizing the signs of anxiety.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah, it's like anxiety is a chameleon. It can manifest in so many different ways.
Okay, so what should we be looking out for?
Well, anxiety can show up in three main areas: physically, emotionally, and in our thinking.
Okay, so a full mind-body experience.
Exactly.
So let's start with those physical signs.
Okay.
What kind of physical sensations might we experience when anxiety strikes?
Okay, so picture this.
Okay.
You're just chilling on the couch,
Okay.
relaxing, watching TV,
Yeah.
and suddenly your heart starts pounding like a drum solo.
Oh, yeah, I've totally been there.
It's like your body's on high alert.
But there's no real danger.
Exactly. Your body's reacting to a perceived threat, even though there's no real reason to be scared.
It's so weird how that happens.
Yeah, it's your body's natural response to stress, but sometimes it overreacts.
So a racing heart is one sign. What else?
Well, you might also experience shortness of breath, dizziness, nausea, muscle tension.
Oh, yeah, that muscle tension thing is the worst.
Yeah, it's like your whole body is clenched up in a knot.
Exactly.
And then there are sleep disturbances.
Oh, yeah, when your mind just won't shut off at night.
Exactly. Your thoughts are racing and you just can't seem to fall asleep.
It's like your brain is stuck in overdrive.
Yeah, it's like you can't relax.
It's amazing how powerful our minds are, how they can trigger all these physical reactions.
It really is. The mind-body connection is a powerful thing.
So we've covered the physical symptoms. What about the emotional side of anxiety?
Well, anxiety can really mess with our emotions.
In what way?
Well, for one thing, there's that constant feeling of worry.
Yeah, I know that feeling all too well.
Just like having this knot in your stomach that just won't go away.
Exactly, and you can't seem to shake it no matter what you do.
Right. And then there's restlessness, agitation.
Yeah.
You just can't seem to relax.
And then there's fear.
Oh, yeah. Fear is a big one.
It can range from this general sense of unease to full-blown panic attack.
Exactly. And panic attacks can be really scary.
One of the articles described them as feeling like a heart attack.
Yeah, they can be really intense.
So what exactly happens during a panic attack?
Well, it's basically your body's fight or flight response going into overdrive.
Like it's preparing for a life or death situation.
Exactly. But there's no real danger present.
So it's a false alarm.
Yeah. But your body doesn't know that.
So it reacts as if there's a real threat.
Exactly. You might feel like you can't breathe. Your chest might tighten. You might feel dizzy, lightheaded, or even faint.
That sounds terrifying.
It can be. But it's important to remember that panic attacks are not dangerous.
Okay, good to know.
They're just a temporary surge of intense sensations, and they will pass.
How long do they usually last?
They typically subside within a few minutes, although it can feel like forever when you're in the midst of one.
I bet.
But the important thing is to remember that you're going to be okay.
Okay, so we've talked about the physical and emotional symptoms. What about the cognitive symptoms? How does anxiety affect our thinking?
Well, anxiety can really mess with our thoughts.
How so?
Well, it can make it hard to concentrate for one thing.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely experienced that.
Oh. And it can also cause unwanted thoughts to pop into your head.
Like intrusive thoughts.
Exactly. And you might also find yourself struggling with irrational fears.
Like what?
Oh, like fear of flying, or fear of spiders, or fear of public speaking, things like that.
I see.
And your inner critic might start to get really loud.
The one that tells you you're not good enough.
Exactly.
So it's like anxiety is attacking us on all fronts, physically, emotionally, and mentally.
It really is a full-body experience.
And I imagine it manifests differently in everyone.
Oh, absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all picture when it comes to anxiety.
Right. So it's important to be aware of the different ways that anxiety can show up.
Exactly. And the more you understand about anxiety, the better equipped you'll be to manage it.
Speaking of managing anxiety, let's dive into some strategies for taking control.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
The good news is that anxiety is highly treatable and manageable.
Absolutely. There's no need to suffer in silence.
So what are some approaches that people can take to manage their anxiety?
Well, there are two main avenues: psychotherapy and medication.
Okay, two powerful tools.
And they often work best in tandem, like a dynamic duo.
One of the articles you sent raved about cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
Oh, yeah. CBT is a really effective therapy for anxiety.
Can you explain how it works?
Sure. So CBT is basically about identifying and changing those negative thought patterns and behaviors that are fueling your anxiety.
So it's like rewiring your brain.
Exactly. You're learning new ways to think and behave in situations that trigger your anxiety.
So it's not about eliminating anxiety altogether, but about learning to manage it more effectively?
Precisely. You're gaining control over your anxiety instead of letting it control you.
I like that.
And there's also exposure therapy, which is especially helpful for folks with phobias.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
It's basically about gradually exposing yourself to the things you're afraid of in a safe and controlled environment.
So you're facing your fears head on.
Exactly. And the idea is that the more you expose yourself to the thing you're afraid of, the less anxious you'll feel over time.
I can see how that would work.
And then there's medication.
Right.
Antidepressants like SSRIs and SNRIs are often prescribed to help manage anxiety symptoms.
How do those work?
Well, they basically work by tweaking those neurotransmitter levels we talked about earlier, serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine.
So they help to restore balance in the brain.
Exactly. And there are also anti-anxiety meds called anxiolytics. They can be used sometimes in conjunction with antidepressants.
Okay.
And in some cases, beta blockers might be prescribed to help manage the physical symptoms of anxiety, like that racing heart.
It's important to note that medication should always be prescribed and monitored by a healthcare professional, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right. And finding the right medication and dosage is crucial.
Exactly. It's all about working with your doctor to find what works best for you.
Okay, so we have psychotherapy and medication as our main treatment options.
Yes.
But what about things that people can do on their own to manage their anxiety?
Oh, there are tons of things you can do on your own.
The articles you sent were full of practical tips.
Yeah, like what?
Well, one that stood out to me was journaling.
Oh, yeah. Journaling is great.
It's like having a conversation with your anxiety, getting all those worries and fears out of your head and onto paper.
Exactly. It can be incredibly therapeutic.
And it's a great way to track your progress over time.
It's like having a tangible record of your journey.
I also love the idea of breathing exercises.
Oh, yeah. Those are super helpful.
It's amazing how such a simple act, like taking a few deep breaths, can have such a profound impact on our anxiety levels.
Right. It's like you're sending a signal to your nervous system to calm down.
It's like hitting the reset button.
Exactly. And another practical strategy is setting realistic goals.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Instead of trying to do everything at once, break down your tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks.
That makes so much sense.
It helps to prevent feeling overwhelmed, which is a major anxiety trigger.
Absolutely. And it's okay to ask for help when you need it, right?
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to reach out to your support system.
Right. Your friends, your family, your therapist, whoever you feel comfortable talking to.
Exactly. Talking to someone you trust can help you process your feelings, gain perspective, and just feel less alone in your struggles.
Human connection is so powerful.
It really is. It's a reminder that you're not in this alone.
And what about mindfulness?
Mindfulness is a great tool for managing anxiety.
How so?
Well, it's all about being present in the moment without judgment.
So you're noticing your thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by them.
Exactly. It's like hitting the pause button on that runaway train of anxious thoughts.
And how do you practice mindfulness?
Well, there are lots of ways you can meditate. You can do yoga. You can even just take a few moments to savor a cup of tea or listen to the sounds around you.
It's about bringing your full attention to the present moment.
Exactly. And finding pockets of calm amidst the chaos of daily life.
Another strategy that comes up a lot is exercise.
Oh, yeah. Exercise is fantastic for managing anxiety.
And it's not just about physical health, right?
Right. Exercise has all these amazing mental benefits, too.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, it releases endorphins, which have mood-boosting effects.
So it's like a natural antidepressant.
Exactly. And it can also help reduce stress and improve sleep.
And when you're exercising, you're not dwelling on your anxious thoughts.
Right. You're focused on your body and your movements.
It's like giving your mind a much-needed break.
Exactly. And speaking of things that are good for your mental health, we can't forget about sleep.
Oh, yeah, sleep is so important.
It's crucial for both our physical and mental well-being.
When I'm sleep deprived, my anxiety goes through the roof.
I hear that when you're not getting enough sleep, your brain and body don't have a chance to recharge and reset.
Right, so you're more vulnerable to stress and anxiety.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So aim for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep each night.
Solid advice.
It's like giving your mind the rest it needs to function at its best.
Okay, so we've got mindfulness, exercise, sleep, connection. It's like building a fortress of resilience against anxiety.
Exactly. You're giving yourself all the tools you need to manage anxiety effectively.
Now, earlier we touched upon the fact that anxiety isn't just one thing.
Right.
There's a whole spectrum of anxiety disorders, each with its own unique features.
Exactly.
And the articles you sent actually provide some insights into a few of the most common ones.
Yeah, like what?
Well, let's start with generalized anxiety disorder, or GD.
Okay.
What are the hallmarks of GD?
Well, GD is characterized by excessive and persistent worry about everyday things.
So it's not just worrying about one specific thing, it's worrying about everything.
Exactly. People with GD might worry about their health, their finances, their relationships, their work, even minor things that most people wouldn't give a second thought to.
And these worries are constant.
Yeah, they can be relentless, leading to fatigue, muscle tension, sleep problems, and difficulty concentrating.
It sounds exhausting.
It can be. It's like their minds are constantly on high alert, scanning for potential threats, even when there are none.
What about panic disorder?
Well, panic disorders is characterized by recurring panic attacks.
Those sudden episodes of intense fear that come on unexpectedly?
Exactly. It's like your body's alarm system is going haywire.
And we talked earlier about how panic attacks can feel physically like a heart attack.
Right.
What are some of the other symptoms people might experience during a panic attack?
Well, you might feel like you can't breathe, like your chest is tightening or like you're choking.
Yeah.
You might feel dizzy, lightheaded, or fainted. Your heart might race, and you might even experience numbness or tingling in your extremities.
Wow, that sounds really scary.
It can be, but the important thing is to remember that it will pass.
Is there anything people can do if they're experiencing a panic attack?
Well, the first thing is to try to stay calm and remember that the panic attack will pass, even though it feels like it won't.
Easier said than done.
I know, but it's important to focus on your breathing. Take slow, deep breaths and count as you inhale and exhale.
Okay.
And find a safe, quiet place where you can sit or lie down. Remove yourself from any overwhelming stimuli.
Good advice.
And if you have someone you trust nearby, reach out for support.
It's always good to have someone there to help you through it.
Absolutely, and knowing what your triggers are can also be really helpful.
So you can either avoid them or have a plan in place to manage them.
Exactly. Self-awareness is key when it comes to managing panic disorder.
Okay. Let's move on to social anxiety disorder.
Right.
What makes that different from just being shy?
Well, social anxiety disorder, sometimes called social phobia, is characterized by an intense and debilitating fear of social situations.
So it goes beyond everyday shyness.
Exactly. It's a fear of being judged, humiliated, or rejected by others that can significantly impact a person's life.
So it's not just about feeling uncomfortable in social situations. It's a fear that can be paralyzing.
Exactly. People with social anxiety disorder might avoid social gatherings altogether. They might worry about saying the wrong thing, blushing, sweating, or stumbling over their words.
They might overthink every interaction.
Exactly. And it can really impact their work, their relationships, and their overall quality of life.
But the good news is that, like other anxiety disorders, social anxiety is highly treatable. What are some of the treatment options for social anxiety?
Well, CBT is really effective for social anxiety.
How so?
Well, it helps people challenge those negative thoughts and beliefs that are fueling their fear of social situations.
So it's about reframing those thoughts.
Exactly. Learn to view social interactions in a more balanced and realistic way.
And I imagine exposure therapy could also be helpful for social anxiety.
Yes, definitely. Gradually exposing yourself to those feared social situations, starting with small steps, can help you build confidence and reduce anxiety over time.
It's about facing your fears head on, but in a safe and controlled way.
Exactly.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into the world of anxiety so far.
It has.
We've covered the causes, the symptoms, different types of anxiety disorders, and a whole range of practical strategies for managing anxiety.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but it's all incredibly important information.
I agree.
And I hope our listeners are finding it helpful and empowering.
Me too.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, there's one more area I'd love to explore.
Okay, what's that?
The articles mentioned a fascinating connection between anxiety and our gut health.
Oh yeah, the gut-brain connection.
Exactly. I found that really intriguing.
It's a relatively new area of research, but it's turning out to be incredibly important.
So what have scientists discovered?
Well, it turns out that our gut and our brain are constantly communicating.
They're like best friends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this gut-brain connection plays a significant role in our mental and emotional well-being.
So if we're not giving our gut the right fuel, it could be contributing to anxiety.
That's the current thinking.
That's a game changer.
It really is.
So what are we supposed to eat?
Well, research suggests that diets high in processed foods, sugar, and unhealthy fats can throw off the balance of our gut microbiome.
Our gut microbiome.
Yeah, that's the community of trillions of bacteria that live in our digestive tract.
Wow, trillions.
I know, it's mind-boggling. And when our gut microbiome is out of whack, it can lead to inflammation.
Inflammation.
And inflammation is linked to a whole host of issues, including anxiety.
So it's not just about what those foods are doing to our waistlines.
Right, it's about what they're doing to our mental health, too.
Wow, so we really need to be mindful of what we're putting into our bodies.
Absolutely. We need to nourish our entire system from the inside out.
Okay, so what are some gut-friendly foods that we should be eating?
Well, the research emphasizes the importance of fiber.
Fiber.
Yeah, fiber is like a feast for those beneficial bacteria in our gut.
So what are some good sources of fiber?
Fruits, vegetables,
Yeah.
whole grains, legumes, those are all great sources of fiber.
So eating a rainbow of colorful fruits and veggies isn't just good for Instagram.
Right, it's good for our gut bugs, too.
I love that.
And then there are fermented foods,
Fermented foods.
like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi.
Okay.
These foods are packed with probiotics,
Probiotic.
which are live beneficial bacteria that can help replenish and diversify our gut microbiome.
So adding a dollop of yogurt to our breakfast or a side of kimchi with our dinner could actually be helping to calm our anxiety.
It's possible.
I love that food can be medicine.
It's a fascinating area of study, and while more research is definitely needed, there's growing evidence that making gut-friendly choices can have a significant impact on our mental well-being.
So it's like we're tending a garden.
Exactly. We need to cultivate a healthy environment for those beneficial bacteria to thrive.
This whole gut-brain connection is mind-blowing.
It really is.
It makes you realize that taking care of our mental health isn't just about therapy and meditation. It's about taking a holistic approach that includes nourishing our gut.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of our physical, mental, and emotional well-being.
And it's empowering to know that we have more control over anxiety than we might think.
Exactly. And it starts with the choices we make every day.
Like what we eat.
Exactly.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive into anxiety.
It has.
We've covered so much ground, from understanding the root causes and recognizing the sneaky ways anxiety shows up, to exploring specific disorders and arming ourselves with a whole toolkit of practical strategies.
We've covered a lot.
We have, and this connection between our gut health and anxiety was a major aha moment for me.
I'm glad you found it helpful.
I did, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling just as empowered as I am.
I hope so.
And knowledge really is power, and understanding anxiety is the first step towards taking control and living a more fulfilling life.
Couldn't agree more.
We've talked about so many strategies for managing anxiety, but as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
We've talked about the impact of stress, but what about the role of resilience?
Resilience.
What factors might help some people bounce back from challenging experiences while others struggle with anxiety?
That's a great question.
It's something to think about as you continue your journey of understanding and managing anxiety.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's so many resources available to help you navigate the ups and downs of anxiety. Reach out to a therapist, connect with a supportive friend or family member, or explore the wealth of information and online communities dedicated to anxiety support.
Great advice.
You have the power to create a life where anxiety doesn't hold you back.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into anxiety. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive. All right, so we're back and ready to finish our deep dive into anxiety.
Ready when you are.
Picking up right where we left off, talking about that fascinating link between what we eat and how anxious we feel.
Right, the gut-brain connection.
Okay, so remind me again how it all works.
Well, basically, our gut is like this bustling community of trillions of bacteria.
So, trillions.
Trillions. It's incredible. And these bacteria, they're not just hanging out down there. They're actually sending signals to our brain.
So our gut is talking to our brain.
Exactly. It's a two-way communication highway. And this communication plays a big role in our mood, our thoughts, our behavior, even our anxiety levels.
Okay, so if our gut is sending all the wrong signals because we're not treating it right.
Exactly. It can contribute to anxiety.
Makes sense. So what do we need to do?
Well, the articles you sent talked about how diets high in processed foods,
Processed foods,
sugar, and unhealthy fats can really throw off the balance of our gut microbiome.
That's the community of bacteria, right?
Exactly. And when our gut microbiome is out of balance, it can lead to inflammation.
Inflammation, and that's linked to anxiety.
Exactly. It's all connected.
So it's not just about what those foods are doing to our waistlines, it's about what they're doing to our mental health, too.
Exactly. It's about nourishing our entire system.
Okay, so what are some gut-friendly foods that can help?
Well, the research really highlights the importance of fiber.
Fiber, okay.
It's like food for those beneficial bacteria in our gut.
So fruits, vegetables, whole grains.
Exactly. All those good things.
And fermented foods, right?
Oh, yes. Fermented foods are amazing. They're packed with probiotics.
Oh, sure.
Live beneficial bacteria that can help replenish and diversify our gut microbiome.
Okay, so we're talking about things like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut.
Exactly. All those delicious fermented goodies.
So we're saying that adding a dollop of yogurt to our breakfast or a side of kimchi with our dinner could actually be helping to calm our anxiety.
It's possible.
I love that food can be medicine.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It really is. This whole gut-brain connection is mind-blowing.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is.
Absolutely. So we need to take a more holistic approach to managing anxiety.
I think so.
It's not just about therapy and medication, it's also about what we're putting into our bodies.
Exactly. Taking care of our gut health is crucial for our overall well-being.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into anxiety.
I agree.
We've covered so much ground today.
We have.
From understanding the root causes to exploring different types of anxiety disorders and all those practical strategies for managing anxiety.
And don't forget about the gut-brain connection.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one for me.
For me, too.
So much valuable information to help us take control of our anxiety and live more fulfilling lives.
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
As we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay, I'm listening.
We've talked about the impact of stress, but what about the role of resilience?
Resilience, that's a good one.
What factors might help some people bounce back from challenging experiences while others struggle with anxiety?
That's a really interesting question, something to think about.
It is, isn't it? And remember, there's no shame in seeking help if you're struggling with anxiety.
Absolutely.
There are so many resources available, therapists, support groups, online communities.
You don't have to go through this alone.
Exactly. You have the power to create a life where anxiety doesn't hold you back.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into anxiety. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Deep Dive. I'm out.